Okay, I hope everybody can see my presentation screen. If you cannot see it, would somebody give me a little shout out on the Zoom, in the Zoom chat area? My name is Ann Carmichael, and this is probably my fifth year presenting on financial aid at Acadiana Christian. Oh, we still have some people joining us. So, um, as I'm sh- as I'm sure Mrs. Aber has mentioned to you and others in your administration, the Louisiana Department of Education is asking that the class of 2021 complete the free application for federal student aid as a requirement for graduation. Now, I'm not sure if this is a requirement at Acadiana Christian, but I'm going to give you some ideas on why you should be completing it, whether it's required there or not. College can be pretty expensive, as you can probably speak to your parents about. And you need to start preparing for these expenses. And let's talk a little bit about what those are. You're going to have to purchase equipment and books and supplies. So, all of your notebooks, if you're maybe in architecture, your art supplies, a computer if you need one to take with you to school, your personal expenses will, which will include your phone bill. Perhaps you're doing your laundry in your dorm room, any fuel for your car to get back and forth to campus, your room and board, which could include your dorm room or your apartment if you're staying off campus, which would then include your electricity, water, and gas, and any groceries or cleaning supplies that you might need to keep tidy. And then your tuition and fees. And these fees could include your parking, library, technology, and athletic fees, and also your campus transportation. So, when you are looking on your college websites and you see that flat rate tuition amount, keep in mind that there are other expenses included as well. And you might want to talk to your admissions representatives about that total cost of attendance. But the good news is that financial aid is available from the federal government, from our state government in the form of the TOPS scholarship. Your college and career schools will have institutional scholarships and aid available for you, and then nonprofit and private organizations. Now, every year, the federal government provides more than $120 billion in student financial aid. And by completing the FAFSA itself, you will be considered for a portion of that aid. And that includes the federal Pell Grant, the federal Supplemental Education Opportunity Grant, the Teacher Educational Assistance for College and Higher Education Grant, the Iraq and Afghanistan Service Grant, Federal Work Study, and direct subsidized, unsubsidized, and plus loans. Now, federal student aid grants are a form of financial aid that does not have to be repaid. So, when you receive your financial aid offers from the colleges that you're being accepted to, you always want to accept all of the grant money that's offered to you. The federal grant family includes the Pell Grant, which is for undergraduates with financial need, FSEOGs, which is for undergraduates with exceptional financial need, service grants for students of military parents who died defending the country following 9/11, and then teach grants for students pursuing a teaching career. The Federal Work Study Program provides part time jobs to help you pay for your education expenses. So, when you tell the financial aid office that you're interested in federal work study, you're going to be considered for this program. Then the monies you earn from working on campus will be paid directly to you, and you can use this money to pay for your miscellaneous expenses. Now, this is a FAFSA question. You'll be asked if you're interested in federal work study, and you can answer yes, no, or I'm not sure. We always encourage students to answer yes because it does not obligate you to take the positions, but it does let the financial aid office know to offer them to you. And these jobs can be posted on your professional resume. So once you graduate and you're starting to apply for jobs, perhaps it's your first professional job, this looks great and they know that you've gotten some office experience. Now, direct subsidized loans are based on financial need, and no interest is charged on them until you graduate or cease to attend. On the other hand, a type of loan you could be offered is the unsubsidized loan. And everyone is eligible for this type of loan, but please keep in mind that interest is beginning to accrue while you are in college. So be careful and always maximize the subsidized loan portion first. So you see there's a big difference between the direct subsidized and the unsubsidized loans. Always accept the subsidized loans first if you need them to complete your education. And you can remember this by telling yourself that the U and unsubsidized means that you always pay the interest on that loan. If you are offered student loans, um, remember that you should accept the federal student loans first if you need them, because payment is not due on this type of loan until you graduate or cease to attend. The interest rate is fixed at a lower rate and no credit check is required. Also, this type of loan for students is in the student's name. If you accept a private student loan, these might require payments be made while you're still in school, which can be kind of tricky if you're not working full time. The interest rate might be variable and it's often a lot higher, and they almost always require a cosigner. And that means that you're asking a parent or someone else to become a party to that loan. In case you cannot repay it, then they become responsible for paying that loan back. So, to dispel the myth, almost everyone is eligible for some type of federal student aid. Now, all federal student aid and most institutional and private aid is contingent upon completion of the free application for federal student aid, or the FAFSA, which launched on October 1st, and it does so every year. So remember, you must submit a FAFSA every year you're going to be in college. And also remember that student financial aid is awarded on a first come, first served basis. So you want to get your FAFSA submitted as soon as possible. And we have recently heard that over 1 million FAFSAs have already been submitted for next academic year. So that's your freshman year in college. So make sure you're getting to the head of the line and getting your FAFSAs submitted as soon as possible. You'll want to begin the FAFSA process by collecting all of the documents that you need to complete the process. And if you have everything in front of you, it shouldn't take too very long to complete. Some people say 20 minutes, others say 30 to 45 minutes, but either way, it is a short period of time to be eligible for money to help pay for college. So those documents are going to include the student and parents' social security cards, the student and parents' 2019 income tax returns if you filed them, the W-2s because there's some information on this form that might not be shown on the tax return itself, and then all bank statements and records of investments. because you do have to report your balances of these accounts as of the date you submit your FAFSA. You're going to begin the FAFSA process by creating a Federal Student Aid ID, or the FSA ID. Now, this allows the student and the parents to identify themselves electronically when submitting the FAFSA. The FSA ID consists of a unique username and a password that's going to be created by you, and it should reflect only your personal information. Each student and one of his parents should create an ID by visiting fsaid.ed.gov. Now be sure you're only using your own personal email address and your own mobile phone number. Students, if you don't already have your own email address, you'll want to go ahead and create that, because once you graduate from high school, if you've used your high school email address, Federal Student Aid will have no way of getting in touch with you about your financial aid. The FSA ID is legally binding. It's your electronic signature, and you're going to use it every year that you're in college. So make sure you are recording it and keeping it in a very safe place. Don't share it with anyone else. If you don't have access to a computer when you're ready to start your FAFSA, you can always download the FAFSA mobile app. It's called My Student Aid, and you can use it to submit your FAFSA from your mobile device, your mobile phone, any device that has internet access. Or if you prefer, you can go to the web-based version at fafsa.gov. Now you're going to begin the FAFSA by logging in with the student's FSA ID. So enter the student's username and password, because the FAFSA is the student's application for Federal Student Aid. The parent's FSA ID is going to come in a little bit later if you choose to link your tax information, mom and dad, from the IRS and have it automatically tabulated in the student's FAFSA. And then either mom or dad will use their FSA ID to sign the student's FAFSA as well. The high school class of 2021 should be submitting the 2021-22 FAFSA. And students say, why? I'm graduating in 2021. But think about this. You're applying for financial aid for next academic year. So you're going to want to complete the 2021-2022 form. So you'll have financial aid ready and waiting for you your freshman year in college. There are 8 sections that need to be completed before submitting your FAFSA, and these include the student demographics, where you'll be asked to provide the student's social security number, name, date of birth, email address, physical address, residency status, and gender. And while we're at it, look over toward the top on the left-hand side, and you'll see that each page tells you whose information you're supposed to be reporting on this specific page. It's on a blue ribbon across toward the top. This one says student information. When you switch over to the parent section, they'll tell you to enter the parent's info. The next section is school selection, where the student will list their high school, the colleges that they want their FAFSA data to be sent to, and their housing plans on each of those campuses. Next is the dependency status section, where there'll be a list of 10 questions asked of the student that will determine whether he is an independent or a dependent student for FAFSA purposes. And I'll go over those 10 questions in just a few minutes. Then They want to know the number of dependents living in the student's household and the parent's education level. And a lot of times parents wonder why they're being asked what their education level is within the FAFSA. But keep in mind that there could be additional financial aid for students um, in first generation families. So if no one else in your family has completed college, your child might be eligible for additional financial aid. Then you move to the parent demographic section where parents will report their social security numbers, their marital status, and their email addresses. Then the parent and student's financials. This is where each of you will report any working wages from 2019. You'll be asked if you received any federal benefits and report those. And this is where you'll enter your savings and investment balances. Then it's time to sign and submit the form. This is where you'll both use your FSA IDs. And then lastly is the confirmation page. Now, as you're moving through the FAFSA, if you have a question about a question, look over to the right-hand side and you'll always find a question mark. You can click on that question mark and get a more detailed description of exactly how they want you to answer the question. There are also hyperlinks if you're not sure what a term means. And there are a lot of them in financial aid. Just click on those hyperlinks. You can have a FAFSA online chat if you'd like to talk to someone, or you can call me at Leela's FAFSA helpline, and I'm happy to work through this with you. But for tonight's session, I'm going to cover just the most commonly asked FAFSA questions. Now, if you have a question that I don't address or that we come across, please use your Zoom chat box to jot those down. And at the end of the presentation, I'll go over each of those and answer them. If you prefer, I'm going to leave my email address and Leela's FAFSA helpline at the end of the presentation, and you can communicate with me privately. The citizenship requirement. This is often asked. I'm not a citizen, but I believe I'm an eligible non-citizen. Now, this is one of the hyperlinks that you can click on. But either way, a student must be a citizen or eligible non-citizen to complete a FAFSA. But his parents do not have to be. And if you find yourself in that situation, go ahead and complete your FAFSA. But when you're asked for your parents' social security numbers, you will use zeros in those spaces. Young men between the ages of 18 and 26 have to be registered with Selective Service to be eligible for any type of federal benefit. And because grants, work study, and student loans are administered by federal student aid, they are considered federal benefits. So guys, if you haven't already registered with Selective Service, you can do so within the FAFSA. Unless you're planning to pay out of pocket for your college expenses, you'll want to go ahead and register. Now, I had a young man tell me, but I'm not 18 yet. But the beauty of registering while you're in the FAFSA is that they'll hold on to your information and you will be registered as of the date you turn 18. Only the colleges that you list on your FAFSA are going to consider you for federal student aid. They're not just going to blast out your personal and financial information to every college across the country. You have to give them permission. So you'll want to add all of the schools that you're considering. Now you can add up to 10 each time you submit a FAFSA. And there are special instructions on this page. You'll see the hyperlink here. Click on the hyperlink and they will guide you through adding any additional colleges over 10. Now, these are the 10 dependency status questions, and this is one of our most commonly asked questions. Am I a dependent? Do I have to provide parental information? I'm going to read through them quickly. The first is, will you be 24 or older by January 1st of the school year for which you're applying for financial aid? Now remember that these are questions for the student. Are you married or separated but not divorced? Will you be working on a graduate degree? Do you have children who receive more than half of their support from you? Or do you have dependents other than children or a spouse who live with you and receive more than half of their support from you? Are you currently serving on active duty in the U.S. Armed Forces for purposes other than training? And remember that boot camp and basic training is considered training. So if you're in that situation when you graduate, you are still considered a dependent student. Are you a veteran of the U.S. Armed Forces? Or at any time since you turned 13, were both of your parents deceased? Were you in foster care? Or were you a ward or dependent of the court? Are you an emancipated minor? Or are you in legal guardianship as determined by a court? And it's important to remember that legal custody is not always considered legal guardianship. So make sure you have your documentation with you when you're answering this question. Are you an unaccompanied youth who's homeless, or are you self-supporting and at risk of being homeless? Now, if you can answer yes to one of these questions and provide a legal document supporting your claim, then you're considered an independent student for FAFSA purposes. All other students are going to be considered dependent and be required to provide parental information. For FAFSA purposes, you're not considered an independent student simply because you file your own taxes or perhaps you live alone and support yourself. Now, if you do find yourself in this type of situation, you can speak to the financial aid office and they might be able to offer you some additional aid. The number one question we are asked: which parents do I report on my FAFSA? Now, if you live with both of your biological parents, then that's simple. You're just going to list both of them. But if the parent you lived with the longest in the past 12 months is either separated, divorced, or was never married, you should only list that parent on the FAFSA. Unless that parent is remarried, then you're going to list that parent and your step-parent. So in other words, federal student aid is trying to get an idea of the financial standing of the student in the household that he lived in the longest the past 12 months. If you're identified as a dependent student, but your parents refuse to provide their information on your FAFSA, you can go ahead and submit it stating that you're unable to provide information about them, but you're only going to be offered federal student loans, and everyone wants to try to get as much assistance as they can. So if you explain this to your parent and they still refuse to provide their info, contact your financial aid office because they can use their professional judgment to help you through the process. You'll go into an appeal process and they will work with you individually to try to get your parents' information or make some exceptions for you. Now, to make processing your student aid a lot quicker, parents and students, if you've submitted a 2019 Internal Revenue tax return, then you will want to try to use the data retrieval tool. And this is where by entering your FSA ID, you can give FAFSA permission to take you over to the IRS website grab your tax information and put it directly into the FAFSA. This makes it so much quicker. It leads to fewer errors and also diminishes your chances of being selected for verification on the college campus. Because think about it, if you're manually entering your tax information into your FAFSA, they're not going to take your word for it. They're probably almost definitely going to ask you to go back to the IRS at a later date and request a tax transcript and then send it on to federal student aid. So this just makes it a lot quicker for you. Now, this is why you need to have your income tax return in front of you. And we've learned this the hard way. You must show exactly what's printed on your 2019 tax return in the IRS site. They're not worried about your current information. They're concerned with you being who you say you are, you having a copy of your own return and putting exactly what's printed on that page. In other words, we've seen students and parents whose tax preparer may have misspelled their name. The IRS wants you to misspell it here. Or say you've moved since you filed a return, they want the address exactly as printed. If it's street or avenue or drive, even if it was misrepresented on your return, they want exactly what's printed on that front copy of your return before they will allow you to proceed. And then you are almost finished. Um, but I'm going to really encourage you to review your student aid report before you submit your FAFSA. And this is a list of every question you were asked on the FAFSA and then your answer to each of those questions. And this is your last opportunity before you submit to make those corrections. So make it easy on yourself and check over your answers before you submit the information to the financial aid office, because once they receive it, they're beginning to work on your award. If you find an error later on, you're going to have to log back into your FAFSA, correct it, sign it with your IDs, submit it again, and then the information goes back to the financial aid office and they're sort of starting over in the processing of your aid. Now, when you do get to the signature page, you'll see that the student is asked to sign and one parent. This is where you will enter your username and passwords. Once you do submit your FAFSA, a confirmation page is going to pop up. It's going to look similar to this, and although the student will receive an email from Federal Student Aid confirming that they have received the FAFSA, this is the only place you're going to get this much detail. So I would encourage you to take a screenshot of your confirmation page or print it, because you're going to see that you'll find out the next steps you need to take to complete the student financial aid process. You'll see a list of the colleges that are going to receive your FAFSA data. You can review your estimated expected family contribution and consider your financial aid estimates. And I'm going to really emphasize estimates here, because everybody gets excited when they see these dollar amounts. But federal student aid is not going to make your financial aid offers. This is just a suggestion to the financial aid office using the information you manually inputted into the FAFSA, and they're going to send those estimates off to the college and they will make your financial aid offer. Now, if you begin a FAFSA but you don't submit it, or say you submitted your FAFSA without signatures, or only with the student or the parent signed and they're missing a signature, you're going to be receiving communication from Federal Student Aid letting you know that they need some more information. Parents, it's good for you to know that these communications go directly to the email address listed in the student section. So make sure you're encouraging your child to check his email timely so he can find out where he is in the process. Once your FAFSA is fully processed, which takes about 3 to 5 days, then that information is sent on to all of the colleges that you've listed within your FAFSA. And each of those financial aid offices will begin to identify any aid that you might be eligible to receive on their campuses. If your family's financial situation has changed since 2019, and we are going to see a lot of that this year, you're responsible for contacting each financial aid office to let them know that perhaps someone has had a layoff or a reduction in hours, or perhaps you have some unexpected medical expenses, because the financial aid office can make some adjustments to your offer, but they'll only do that if you contact them directly and let them know about your situation. Then they're going to be determining the net price of your academic year. They're going to take their cost of attendance for that year. They're going to subtract any grants and scholarships that you're eligible for, and that is going to be the cost of attendance. That's going to be your net price, and you can either pay that difference with student loans, or if you've saved and you have cash to pay for it, that's where that will come in, and this is going to have to be paid before the student can continue on through the first semester of college. Your student financial aid offer, although they aren't all uniform like this, but they will all report their college's cost of attendance, any grants, scholarship, work study, or student loans that they can offer you to go to their school. So be sure you're reading over your financial aid offers very carefully and responding to any additional requests for information that they ask of you. And this is why your counselors will encourage you to apply to as many colleges as you're even considering, so that you can lay out all of your offers. And if price of college is important to you, you'll be able to see what your best bet is as far as prices go. Now, we have seen some students who are attending four-year private colleges get full scholarships and aid offers, and then others going to a public college might not be offered as much. So it's always good to keep all of your options open. You'll want to accept your financial aid in this order: scholarships and grants first, because this is gift aid that does not have to be repaid. Then federal work study, because you've earned that money and you don't have to pay that back. But student loans are borrowed money. So when you receive your offer, you're probably going to be offered the maximum amount of student loans. Just make sure you're doing your math and sitting down and really taking note of exactly how much that academic year is going to cost you, and only accept that loan portion. I know this is a lot of information. So every year, Leela publishes a FAFSA completion guide and workbook, and this year we have one for the class of 2021, and it's free for Louisiana high school seniors. So if you haven't already received your copy, if you want to email me at the address I'm going to leave for you at the end of the presentation, I'll be happy to send this guide over to you. And I'll include our senior checklist for college planning, and that'll give you some tips on staying on track this year. Now, I want to talk for just a moment about scholarships, and I'm sure you've heard about these from your parents and your counselors and your community leaders. But this is gift aid. This does not have to be repaid, and they are everywhere. They're offered by your colleges, your parents' employers, community groups, and religious organizations and social organizations. Some are merit based, so they're based on your academic achievement or a special talent or trait that you have, and others are based on financial need. Some of them are going to cover the entire cost of your tuition, or perhaps you could receive a one time award of a few $100s. But either way, they're worth applying for because this is going to reduce your student loan debt and reduce the cost of your education. So, talk to your school counselor about scholarships that they know about and contact your admissions recruitment officers and the college financial aid representatives because they see a lot of money coming into their school and they have a good idea of some scholarships available as well. This year, we're offering a $1,000 FAFSA completion scholarship. It's just for Louisiana high school seniors. You can find out about that at lila.org and you can get the scholarship application. And then we have a Choose Louisiana scholarship. So once you are in college, or you have an older sibling who's already at a Louisiana college, you can apply for that scholarship as well. For students and parents who are going to a pricier college, Leela does have a nonprofit education loan program. If you find yourself in a situation where you um, exhausted your scholarships and grants and all your federal and state dollars, then feel free to check that out at leelachoice.org. And now is the time to ask your questions. So if I've covered something that was unclear, or if you have already started on your FAFSA and you're having some difficulties, share them in the Zoom chat box. It's on that Zoom bar down below on the bottom of your screen. In the meantime, I'm going to show you Leela's FAFSA helpline here and my email address. If you want to start a conversation with me about your situation, I would be happy to respond to you. I also want you to know that a copy of this presentation is going to be posted on our YouTube channel. It's called Ask Leela. So join us there if you feel like you missed something and you want some clarification. And I'm also going to be sending it over to your counselor, and perhaps she will distribute it to the seniors. So remember to get your FAFSA done as soon as possible and apply for our $1,000 scholarship. I'm going to go ahead and check the chat box to see if anybody has a question. Has anyone already started the FAFSA? If you want to tell me about any colleges you've already applied to, I would love to hear about that and share it with the group. That's fine. If you want to talk to me personally, I will encourage you to go ahead and contact me. I really appreciate you having me, and I'm always available to work with you. Good luck this year. Have a great senior year.